Hello, this is David Scott, instructor for Introduction to Educational Studies, and the purpose of this tutorial is to help orientate your work in the writing of Assignment 1 involving a two-page summary of a peer-reviewed journal article that addresses a theme or topic in this course. So in doing this, we're using the flipped classroom model where you watch this short video at home on your own time, and then you work through the various stages of the video where you'll be asked to do some preliminary writing, and then you bring that writing to an out-of-class tutorial where you'll have an opportunity to work alongside myself or Karen, where we can give you further advice and guidance, look over some of your work, and you can also spend part of that out-of-class tutorial actually doing some writing. Karen has sent out an Eventbrite invite, and you have the opportunity to sign up for one of the following four tutorials. We have two on October 2nd, one from 3 to 4 and another from 4 to 5. We have another two on October 3rd, one from 10 to 11 and another from 11 till noon. Space is limited, so we invite you to do that as quickly as possible to ensure that you are able to attend one of these sessions. So before we begin the tutorial, let's just go over what the assignment is asking. It's due on October 10th. As noted in the course outline, you are asked to find an appropriate peer-reviewed academic article related to a key educational debate, issue, or topic that is addressed in this course. You're then asked to write a two-page summary of this article, and it should include proper APA citations. You have to make sure that it's double spaced and it has the overview of the key points of the article, and you're also asked to hand in a copy of the article with your assignment. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is begin by reading the article. As you're reading the article, what I would like you to do is basically take note of the following three questions. So the first question is, what is the research question or focus this article is exploring, and who or what is being researched? Okay, so every article has a particular focus. It's trying to address a particular question, and you need to identify that. Sometimes it's a bit implicit, and other times it will be explicitly stated, but you need to find out what it is in particular, very specifically, what is this article exploring? Once you have this, you want to consider what was the method? What process did the authors use to gain insights into this question or focus? This is generally a question of methodology. Did they use surveys? Did they have some sort of quantitative study where they have statistics? Did they have classroom observations? Maybe it was a mix of some of these. But you want to think about how did they arrive or investigate this question that the research article is focused on. The final question is, what were the three most significant findings? Now, some of your articles will address and have many findings. So what you want to do is consider this is only a two-page double-spaced summary, so you're not going to be able to talk about 7 different things. So you want to consider what were the three most prominent or significant findings within this research article. Okay, so you've read your article, you've established the focus or the primary question of the research, you've established how the authors went about investigating this question, and you've also determined the primary findings emerging from this research study. So now we need to start the writing process, and the writing process begins by writing an introductory paragraph that it provides a summary of the research. It should be short, it should be concise, but it needs to include all the elements that we looked at when we examined those three questions in the previous slide. So what we have here is a sentence frame that can help you with this process. Now, I'm not saying you have to use this exact sentence frame. It's kind of like training wheels. If your summary or your introduction has all these elements, that is great. It's just a way of communicating the key parts of the article in a way that's very succinct and concise. So we have in this article the authors explored, investigated, researched, you can choose your own term, and you want to briefly summarize the focus or the primary question the researchers were investigating. Make sure you have the year and APA that the study was published in this journal that you found the article in. And instead of saying authors, you could just include the name of the researcher or researchers. From there, you could say something like through examining, and then outline how the authors arrived at the conclusions they did, and then you want to list the major findings. What were their main findings? And you want to list these extremely briefly because you're going to develop the findings in your body paragraphs. So this should be as concise as possible. All right, so let's take a look at an example introduction paragraph. And we have in this article, Newman, Marks, and Gamorin sought to determine to what extent student achievement improved in schools with high levels of authentic pedagogy involving forms of teaching that promote higher order thinking and connections to the world beyond the classroom. So you'll notice there that we've introduced a term, authentic pedagogy. So I did take a bit of time to ensure that I define this term so it's clear what the researchers were talking about. Then we moved to the second part of the introduction. The research team analyzed 504 lessons and 234 assessment tasks in various elementary, middle, and high schools within the Chicago area. So see how I'm really specific about what they actually analyzed to investigate this question. And I also was very specific about the context. So I'm not just saying they looked at various elementary and middle high schools. I made it very explicit that this was in Chicago. So we know we're in a particular context, and you need to be very clear about that in your introduction. From there, we transition to the findings. The researchers found that environments with high levels of authentic pedagogy led to higher academic achievement among all students. They concluded that differences between high and low performing students greatly decreased when students who were normally low achieving were offered authentic forms of pedagogy. Now you'll notice that I only have two findings there. That's in the interest of brevity for this tutorial, but you'll want to include at least three. And what we're doing there is signaling to the reader that these are the main ideas or findings that we're going to explore in the body paragraphs that are going to come next. All right, so what I'd like you to do now is just take a little bit of time, and I want you to try to write an introduction. And I want you to bring this introduction to the writing tutorial. It does not have to be perfect. That's part of why we're doing the tutorial, so you can get feedback, you can ask questions, and we can support you. But it will be helpful if you're not starting from scratch and you have some works in progress that you can bring to the tutorial to further refine as you move forward to crafting a really nice, concise, succinct introduction to open this assignment. All right, so you've done your introduction where you provided a broad level view, a very concise summary of the research article, and you're now ready to explore in greater depth or develop in greater depth each one of the findings that you identified in the introduction. So you're going to organize your body paragraphs so you have a different paragraph for each one of the findings that you noted in this research article. For each one of these body paragraphs, I invite you to use the SES framework or the State Explain Support framework. And basically this framework provides you a very concise and focused way of introducing an idea, developing it, and supporting it. So the state is, you want to state the key finding, point, or argument. So that's like your topic sentence. You're introducing what this paragraph is going to be about. Possible sentence frame for that could be, among the many findings, X found that. and then again you restate in a paraphrased way one of the key findings you introduced in your introduction, and from there you want to explain and develop that idea. So explain the finding or argument in your own words. It could be something like, by this X means that, or specifically. There's different ways to do that. Those are just some ideas. Don't feel that you have to use one of those sentence frames. But the idea in this part is you've introduced one of the key findings, and now you need to develop that. You need to explain more deeply what that finding was about. And then you're going to conclude by supporting this finding. How did the authors arrive to this conclusion? So what evidence did they use, or it could be sometimes an argument, but they've come to this conclusion. It's a significant finding, and how did they arrive at that finding? And generally you'll have some sort of sentence frame where you'll say, for example, or for instance. All right, so let's look at a body paragraph that uses the SES framework. So we have the opening sentence that should have been introduced in your introduction, and you state the key finding that you're going to explore in this paragraph. So I've written, the researchers found that poor levels of intellectual engagement was a pervasive problem in jurisdictions of education across Canada. Nice, clear, and succinct. And now I need to develop this, explain it further. Generally this is going to be 2 or 3 sentences. So I've written, specifically, in a survey of 32,322 students across the country, many students reported a lack of emotional and cognitive investment in their learning. This was particularly evident at the high school level and was more apparent among boys than girls. So you can see that I'm providing added nuance and greater specifics around this research finding. You can see that I've defined the key term, intellectual engagement, and I've also provided some more detailed specifics around the fact that the low levels of intellectual engagement were more prominent among boys than girls. So now let's move to the support. And I've written, in language arts and math, for instance, levels of intellectual engagement in grade 6 averaged close to 60% for girls and 55% for boys, but by grade 10 this number dropped to less than 35% for girls and 30% for boys. So you'll notice here at the end I've made a citation, and that's because I'm drawing out particular statistics that come from a particular page, so I need to cite that. I don't need to quote it, but I'm just acknowledging that as a reader, if you want to go back and verify that, you'll need to go back to page 19. You'll notice that I have Wilms et al. So Wilms was the first author. In this instance, there was 5 authors. So once I've listed that with all the authors present, I can move to et al. I have the date of the publication of the journal article, and then again, I have the page number. Now notice the spaces after the commas and the periods, and that is part of what will be marked, and that's part of the APA that you want to attend to in this assignment. And as you can see, I've supported how those authors or what findings they found that led them to make the claim they made in this finding. So what I want you to do now is just take a few moments and write one of your body paragraphs. So you've identified one of your findings, and using the SES framework, I want you to state what that finding was, develop it, explain it, and then support it with evidence from the article that helps explain how the researchers arrived at the conclusions that they did. And then you can bring this to class, and again, we'll be able to give you feedback and be able to work with you in really crafting that into a very well written body paragraph, and that will set you up for completing the final parts of this assignment. Thank you for taking the time for going through this presentation, and we're greatly looking forward to seeing you at one of the 4 tutorials that you can sign up for in Eventbrite.